Greetings, ladies and gentlemen of the internet. Jan Michael here.
And I'm Melinda, and welcome to The List.
Today's list is a very special one because we're going to be going over our individual top 10 favorite movies of the 90s. In honor of this, I decided to change my look. I got that 90s hair going on, that tubular look. I shaved my beard as a representation of my youth when I couldn't grow one. And I gotta say, I look pretty fucking stupid. Oh, what have I done? I look ridiculous.
Anyway, having grown up in the 90s, this list is comprised of movies that are both nostalgic to us from growing up, as well as ones that we saw later in life that were impactful.
We've got a lot to cover, so let's get things started with our individual number 10s. Sometimes it's just the movies that were there for us when we were kids that made the biggest impact on us. Dad! Now, these don't have to be the best or the brightest of the bunch. They just have to fill us with nostalgia whenever we come back to see them, which is evident in my number 10, The Fifth Element. When creating a new universe, it's always important to make it believable. Is this a world that I can see myself living in? Does it make me want to explore the world and learn everything about it? With The Fifth Element, it most certainly achieves this. At the center of this tale is a great performance by Mila Jovovich, who plays Lilu, who was and continues to be such a popular character that people still cosplay as her. It's not just Mila though. Bruce Willis was in prime action form, Gary Oldman was doing whatever it was that he was doing, and Chris Tucker was both annoying and funny as Ruby Rhod, who I swear is who Damien grew up to be.
We have a problem. Well, TP. No problem. What do we do? What do we do?
Go buy more?
What? What's I'm gonna do? Corona!
Put those characters into fun action sequences, give them great one-liners, and drop them into that very interesting world that I talked about earlier, and you've got the makings of a film that I still look back on very fondly to this day.
And at number 10, I have my pick of Sleepy Hollow. This is a movie that I really liked as a kid because it was a live action adaptation, which I really appreciated because I had only known it as a Disney cartoon. So to see it brought to life was like magic to me. I really enjoyed Christina Ricci. She was one of my favorite actresses as a kid. In the 90s, I always saw everything she was in. I really love the aesthetics that Tim Burton brings. They definitely fit the story. And Johnny Depp, I had also known him from Benny and June, so he was familiar to me, but not enough that he took away from the character. This movie, I would say, is probably one of my top scary movies, mainly because I don't do scary movies. At number 9, I have Ever After. This version of Cinderella is a version told if there was no magical element to it, like fairy godmothers and magic pumpkins, which in itself makes it more magical. This movie is desperately cute. The characters are really endearing. You cannot find fault in the actors. The costumes are gorgeous, and the story itself, though a little bit slower, is really sweet. It has lines that I even quote to myself now, which shows the impact that it's made on my life. My favorite being, if one cannot breathe, one cannot eat. And even though I don't live by that, I still find it quotable today. So this movie is definitely a staple for me.
Animation isn't something that I really look forward to anymore. At least definitely not as much as when I was a kid. As such, after growing up, I really don't have many cartoons that I look back fondly on in terms of feature film. The exception to this being my number 9, Anastasia. What is it about Anastasia that is different from other animations? It's definitely not Don Bluth's best film. It didn't necessarily do anything better than other animated movies. So why this one instead of one that made a bigger impact or broke records? Well, for me, it was about the adventure. Similar to my number 10, there is an adventure that surrounds the events of the film. This adventure is what attracted me to many movies as a kid. There was a goal that the characters were traveling to. They got to see many different sights. There was danger along the way. extra points if the characters were likable, which for me and Anastasia, they were. I like seeing them grow and begin to treat each other differently. And that great music. I honestly don't think there's one song on here that I disliked. In fact, I liked the song so much that when my daughter was born, the very first song that popped into my head that I sang for her was Once Upon a December, which is really powerful that it stuck with me for so long and was the first thing I thought of.
What have I got?
If you spend enough time with me, then you know I love the Muppets, which is actually really funny because as a kid, I found most forms of puppetry actually really scary. No, let it end. Charlie horse, no. Oh. Anyway, the Muppet movie I saw the most growing up was my number 8, A Muppet Christmas Carol. While not the best Muppet film, it was the one I watched again and again as a kid. Heck, this was how I was introduced to the Christmas Carol story. And what better way to do it than with Muppets? You got those great puppet designs, with maybe the exception of the Ghost of Christmas Past, which definitely freaked me out as a kid. But you also got that great message that pulls at your heartstring. And of course, the music, which is just fantastic. This movie became so ingrained into Christmas for me that it was a tradition at my household to see it every single Christmas time. And that's something that I continued long after I moved out of my parents' place. And it's something that I was actually really surprised to find that Melinda did as well.
So yeah, we were definitely Muppeteers at my house, so I can appreciate your picks. I definitely approve of the Anastasia as well. And who knows, might show up a little bit later on. We'll see. Anyway, on to my number 8 pick.
Whoa!
A film that I actually had to see later on in life. It was one that my family didn't really let me watch as a kid. I have Misery. So though I really hate horror movies, I'm definitely into certain suspense. And Misery pretty much hits the nails on the head because I have a deep-rooted fear of stalkers and being trapped and not being able to escape things. So with that being said, the movie was actually great in like one of those guilty pleasure kind of ways. I feel like it gave me a guide for how to escape if I ever did end up in this situation. I am terribly afraid of Kathy Bates, so obviously that means she was really great in her role. And the story itself is a really great one. So if you've never seen it, highly recommend you give this adventure a try if you're not, personally afraid of this kind of scenario. And now again, to flip to an opposite side, a personal joy, I have The Nightmare Before Christmas. So let's be clear, I am not a fan of stop motion animation. However, this movie is definitely the exception. It is the embodiment of all the things that I can appreciate from my childhood. The holidays, we've got Christmas and Halloween represented. We've got songs, great songs performed by Danny Elfman, Oingo Boingo. I enjoy the story greatly, as do millions of people, seeing as how this is really a cultural thing to be into Nightmare Before Christmas. I think that the characters are great. My favorite being actually Oogie Boogie. He has the best song in the whole movie. And I would definitely recommend this to any child who has not seen it. It's not scary. It's got all the love and joy that you would expect from a movie. And it's always a pleasure to watch it with the family.
Back when I was in college, I would go back and see movies from directors that a lot of people were always talking about. Now at the time, Guy Ritchie was coming out with this film, Rock'n'Rolla, which had such a unique trailer to me that I really wanted to go back and see his earlier works before going to check out that one. Lo and behold, my number 7, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. A lot of people compare Guy films with those of Quentin Tarantino, and while I definitely say that's a fair comparison, I do think Guy brings just enough British flair to stand out from Quentin's films. His first movie, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, blew me away when I first saw it. which is actually really funny because I didn't really fully understand it at first. I just knew there was something cool about it, which is honestly the best way to describe it. I wanted to show it off to all my friends and family, and the more I saw it, the more I kept catching things I had missed. This is also the film that got Jason Statham his start, and I gotta say, it's refreshing to see him not play the action hero for once. Or yet, technically. This movie has a ton of great characters, and you're bound to have a few favorites that you really hope survive till the end. Plus, that dialogue.
If you hold back anything, I'll kill you. If you bend the truth, or I think you're bending the truth, I'll kill you. If you forget anything, I'll kill you. In fact, you're gonna have to work very hard to stay alive, Nick. Now, do you understand everything I've said? Because if you don't, I'll kill you.
I am a fan of films with great dialogue, and this movie, definitely a ton of really great quotable lines.
Oh, banana.
Next, I think it's appropriate to put the first film that I ever saw in theaters on this list at number 6, Jurassic Park, which is an experience I don't really have any memory of whatsoever. While I don't remember my theater experience with the film, I do remember watching it all the time at home when I was a kid. In fact, I probably saw it so many times that out of all the movies on this list, this is probably the one that I've watched the most. I also contribute this movie to making me realize that I wanted to be an actor. I would always create characters that interacted with the cast whenever I saw it. No joke. I didn't pretend to be the characters, I would make up my own. And each time I would come up with someone new, have brand new dialogue, and I never got bored of it. The film also still holds up very well today. It's by no means a perfect movie, but it's still a really fun watch. Even though I don't remember my experience with it in theaters, I'm still really glad that this is the first film I saw there, especially given how the series went from there on out. Note to self, pecking order, Jurassic Park.
So getting away from live action for a minute, we're going to go with my number 6, which is The Iron Giant. The Iron Giant is a classic story about boy meets machine, machine turns out to be big weapon, boy changes heart of weapon, and weapon saves the day. This movie, though it has that classic formula, is just a really enjoyable film. I remember I enjoyed the humor in it. The art I really enjoyed. The monster, though he was a machine, when he was sad, you could see the sadness, and when he was happy, you could swear he was smiling. They were such small changes, but they were such big emotions on the screen. I remember too crying a little bit at the ending, and if you haven't seen it, spoilers, he does sacrifice himself, which as a kid, you don't really want the hero to do so, but you know that it has to be done and you can appreciate it more. And then there's always that little surprise at the end that makes you hopeful that maybe there will be a sequel to it.
Continued in part 2.